Bruce and Vicki Heyman have perspectives on this country and their own country that few others ever get. He was appointed by U.S. President Barack Obama as ambassador to Canada from 2014 to 2017. The pair share what they learned while in Ottawa in their book, The Art of Diplomacy, Strengthening the Canada-U.S. Relationship in Times of Uncertainty. And it brings Bruce and Vicki Heyman to our studio tonight. It's such a pleasure to meet you both.
Good to be
Thank
here.
you.
I really enjoyed this book. It was just such a collaborative effort. So one chapter you write, Ambassador, and another chapter you write, Vicki. What was this process like writing a book together, Vicki?
Gosh, it was actually a lot of fun.
Did you hear that?
There were days where, I don't know if it was all
You have it
that
on
much
tape.
fun. But it was a lot of fun because it gave us the ability to walk down memory lane and to really, and a privilege to think about all the extraordinary people we'd met, all the stories that we were told, all the stories we remembered, and the incredible places we visited.
An ambassador?
There was definitely debate, though. We had so many stories.
We did.
And so many ended up on the cutting room floor, as they say. And, you know, I'm disappointed because so many of those stories I loved, and we would go back and forth. What about this one? And what about that one? And, you know, I think there are probably multiple books because our time in Canada was so rich, traveling every province, every territory, from coast to coast to coast. We had experiences that would have filled, you know, several volumes of books, but we had to consolidate it down and, you know, we're happy with where we are and the stories are rich, but there are many others.
We've been on a lot of wonderful journeys together. You know, we started out very early in our life. We met in university. So in undergrad and in business school, we were study buddies, so they say. And then we started our professional lives, both on Wall Street. We used to commute to Lower Manhattan together and had that experience together. And then, you know, working on the Obama campaign as a team. And then the
raising a family.
And raising a family.
Raising a family.
That too,
Yeah,
the
that
marriage.
too,
That was a
right?
big part of it. But
Yeah.
I think that experience together, this was just another one of those extraordinary together experiences.
Well, in the introduction to The Art of Diplomacy, you write, for 3 wonderful years, we worked side by side as American political and cultural envoys to the incredible country of Canada. One thing is for certain, Canada and Canadians changed us for the better. Ambassador, could you give us a specific example of how Canada changed you and Vicki?
I'll give you several, but let's start with one. Do you know, when you come up, whether you're an American, whether it's in business or personal or your friends, you have a perspective. You have a point of view. And you come up with that point of view, and you're sometimes very strong-minded and strong-willed in your perspective and point of view. And I came up here and I learned that 2 people could look at the exact same thing, see it completely differently, and both be right. And so you take pause and you really take time to appreciate that. It's like, you know, energy in the environment. And how do I think about that? And, you know, we have strong debates around the world and in both of our countries about that. But listening and coming up here and listening to that. The second thing was never underestimate how important something is to someone, even though you may think it's very small and insignificant. Americans don't think of our border as being a significant issue, where Canadians look at our border from a very different perspective. And it took for me to come from the United States, to come around to be in Canada, to experience the border coming in on a regular basis and talk to Canadians across the country and fully appreciate why it is that behaviors at the border can impact them so much.
And I guess I could call it an ethos, something that you both live, or how you approach life, is called Tikkun Olam. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
What is that, Vicki?
So Tikkun Olam is the Jewish tradition, or the name for the Jewish tradition of repairing the world. The idea that we should not be bystanders in this world. We should be participants, upstanders, and participate in bringing social justice and righteousness to the world.
How did you use that when you were in Ottawa to guide what you, how your life would be?
I think that I've used this probably my entire life, but the idea of finding people who are like-minded, who share in Tikkun Olam, and unite with them to have these very bold and important conversations that can lead to action, that you can use Tikkun Olam and that galvanizing idea of positive impact to really lock arms with people to make a difference. So I use that, whether that was working on the Obama campaign and finding others that wanted to live in a world that President Obama, or at that time Senator Obama, was setting forward, or getting here to Canada. There are a lot of human connections that we have, and things that are very important human issues, like our environment, social justice, race, assimilation, identity. Those are all things that we have a feeling in the heart about. So being able to address those things and find people that can address them, and then nonprofit organizations or people that are working in the space to unite them to really act on those ideas.
So focusing on
Yes.
What makes us who we are as
Who we
individuals.
are.
And it's very interesting. I was saying before we started taping that one thing I loved about this book was that your relationship is like relationship goals, hashtag.
Gee, thanks.
When President Obama was reelected in 2012, you were both approached to be ambassador. How did you decide who would actually take on that role? Ambassador?
Well, first of all, it's a little bit of stretch about both being approached to be ambassador. Just to consider it, we understand that this process, the president actually has to make those selections.
Right.
But, you know, we sat down and have an understanding of our skill sets and what we bring to the table. We've been together for a very long time. I am very political in nature. I like politics. I think about it. I think about being involved in policy, and I've been very involved in the business world. So when you think about Canada, if given that opportunity, our largest trading partner at the time, and a country that we work with politically and geopolitically around the world with NATO and NORAD in North America, but in the G7, in promoting liberal, small l, democratic, small d, values around the world, I felt that that might be better in my lane. But in joking, which, you know, we had some humor throughout the book, Vicki is not the best in rule following.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And but you know what, that's her spirit, which I love so much.
We knew from the beginning. I'd taken a very senior leadership role in the Obama campaign in 11-12. I was one of the state co-chairs for the re-elect for the president, our state of Illinois, and on the National Finance Committee, working very hard at a high level in that space. And Bruce was working in the Economic Advisory Council with the committee with the president. So long and short of it is, I'm a very entrepreneurial person. I love organizing and I love building community. I love art and culture and the way it binds people. I knew from day one that this was my space and this was my lane. The ambassador lane is very, very organizationally focused, very rule focused. And I had the opportunity to bring up my own chief of staff with me and set forth from day one my own little shop where I could be Vicki and work in conjunction with Bruce and the embassy in this cultural envoy niche. And I visualized it and I saw it. So I was very happy that that's how it actually worked out.
But there's an important secret sauce here, and I think it's an important message for all couples that work together, that if you don't credentialize each other right off the bat, day one, that to try to do it later, you're always trying to play catch up and it's never really firmly established. And what we did all along the way was that we're a team. We're in this as a team. You get the team. When Vice President Biden swore us in, he yelled out to everybody, Canada's getting a twofer. Canada's getting a twofer. And he was right.
Yeah.
When we showed up at the embassy that first day, it was the two of us that brought in Timbits and coffee for all the staff, and the two of us who addressed the Canadian members within and the Americans who were in the embassy. When I had my first very large speech at the National Gallery, firmly established that Vicki had this cultural lane. And so it was important to establish that within the embassy, within the residence, and within the community.
I think from a couple's perspective, it is that open communication. It's the trust. It's knowing, where you want to go, when you should lead and when you should follow, when it's, how to support someone, how to tell them the truth. I mean, how to have a truth teller. So in our relationship, it's no holes barred. We just let it all out. And I think, You know, that's how we operated.
I have a lot of black and blue marks for kicks that are going on here. But I know exactly what they're all about when I get them.
If it's one thing, if it's the left leg, it's another.
Well, one of the biggest challenges you had to confront, Ambassador, when you started your job, your position, was on the Keystone XL pipeline issue. Looking back on that time, are there places where you feel you found the best approach and others where maybe you could have done things differently?
Oh, I think tone and style I could have been different when I started. And frankly, you know, it wasn't that the U.S. government didn't know the Canadian position on Keystone. How could they not? The Canadian government were taking out billboards all over Washington and sending messages to every member of Congress, every senator, every member of the White House. Everybody knew the Canadian position going in. And there was a process that was established by President Obama as to how this would be, decided going forward. But when I arrived, it was very clear that the Canadian government wanted me to be a tool in terms of getting this done. And instead of my responding, oh, there's a process, no, I'm not involved, I'm not going to do it, I just said, let me take that back, thank you very much, and probably would have been more diplomatic, more effective my early days had I been more conciliatory and more understanding. That being said, I don't believe the process would have changed. I don't think anything would have been different other than the tone and style, and I could have done a better job.
Are you surprised that Keystone XL is still steeped in controversy all these years later?
Not at all, given what I've gone through and given all the knowledge that I have about this. The reality is that this is a very, very complicated issue. And while it may seem very simplistic to some people on one side, well, just put the pipe in. We can get the oil through. You need it. We have it. Let's just do it. And we have so many together. What's one more? Well, it makes sense if you sat down and asked the people whose backyard or ranch it's going to go through how they feel about it. Or when the original direction of Keystone was going straight over an aquifer which supplied fresh water for a large part of the middle part of our country. So it's very, very complicated. And so, you know, I think that there were probably other paths that could have gone down by the people who are promoting this effort. I don't know where or when it's going to get resolved or if it's going to get resolved. That being said, the United States buys more oil from Canada than the next 5 countries combined, and you are our largest provider of energy that we don't produce ourselves by a lot of all types of energy, and this is an important part of our economy. That being said, I believe climate change is real, and I think many other scientists believe climate change is real, and what we're experiencing in climate events over the last year lead one to believe something significant is taking place.
We're going to talk
about
we
need a transition. Yeah. But am I surprised about Keystone? Given everything I've seen, no, not at all.
We're going to talk about climate change in just a second.
Yeah.
But throughout the book, you are a team. And you actually have a chapter in the book called Hindsight.
Yeah.
And you make a great observation where you wish you knew the things that you needed to know, but you had to learn them, and that took time.
Right.
But you had Vicki on your side. Did you give him any advice when he was facing that challenge with Keystone XL?
I would say no, not respective to Keystone. I did not give him advice. But the advice I gave him as a partner was to get out into Canada, to not be the ambassador to Ottawa, to not get caught up in all the political wranglings of the day, but to get on the road and to talk to real-time Canadians all over this country, from Supreme Court justices to fishermen and farmers.
Why do you think
artists.
that's important to do?
I think it's important because we need to share our stories. We need to understand what the issues of the day are, what's important to the people in this country, where we can find commonalities, where we can find win-win scenarios to get the best outcomes for our tenure and our time there. And that discovery and those conversations, I think, really yielded wonderful results for our time in Canada. And that it was not just the information that we received from them, but they were authentic friendships and relationships that developed, which enabled us to form an incredible matrix and network of phenomenal friends and actors that we could we could be involved with.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the book again.
Yeah.
Ambassador, you write that Canada is a center-left country and the United States is a center-right country. But what's most important about that isn't the difference, but the similarity. We're both center. Ambassador, how difficult is it for our countries to remain in the political center given what's happening in the current media landscape and what's happening on social media?
Wow, there are a lot of pulls going on. A large part of those pulls are happening as a result of economic change. And, you know, people are really struggling in very large segments of our population making ends meet. And even though stock markets may be rallying and the top 10% doing quite well, it's clear that the middle class is having a tough time staying middle and in the middle. Large part of that's due to technological change and innovation, that jobs are just getting eliminated and displaced. But people are looking for quick answers. They're struggling. They're having a difficult time. And people are making promises to pull them in directions which I think are false promises. Then again, they are falling into it. Some of that has to do with xenophobia. Some of that has to do with even racism and anti-immigrant feelings, and these types of things are building around the world. And again, I think that we're going through a very large economic change, which is impacting it. Then you have this communication, this social media, the spreading of information and news. Fake news, real news, all types of things are happening instantaneous and light speed and causing human reactions to accelerate. I think it's hard. It's hard to keep countries and governments stable in those environments. And the democratic system is getting challenged pretty significantly now, both by these internal forces, and then we have these external forces of people like the Russians who are trying to monkey with the elections, which happened in the United States, which I think Canada and other countries should wake up to the fact that you're vulnerable too. So it's a very complicated time.
It feels as it's a time that we haven't seen ever.
Right.
And social media is something that's still very young and we're all trying to figure out how we navigate it. Vicki, do you have any suggestions on how we can get back to the center?
You know, it's like right now, maybe because of media, we see these polarities, the extreme right and the extreme left, that have very loud voices. But most people probably do fall to the center. But the voices on the external ends of this polarization are very, very loud. So, you know, I don't know that I have the answer on how we bring those middle voices forward, but I think we have to continue to stay very involved in engaged in our political system, engaged in our elections, fighting to get the right kinds of people to run for office and get them elected to office, and working really hard on that. I think we, the people, have to use our voices and not just allow it to be hijacked by a loud voice in the media or a talking head, but we have to figure out the way we can amplify our own voices. So maybe there'll be better and better platforms as we go forward for individual voices to have more resonance. I think they already do. I think we can pick up our cell phone and record a video, one individual that can change the course of a dialogue or a community. And I think we have the opportunity to do that with song, with art, with poetry.
So staying engaged is
very
important.
Don't be a bystander.
Yeah, so I think that's our hope. And our hope is also to, you know, we have to look to the next generation too, generational change.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the book because it's so good.
Yeah.
And Ambassador, you write this about Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Yeah.
He was a man of conviction, someone who was authentic, honest, and had a clear perspective of what he wanted for Canada. This was a man with integrity and tenacity. Looking at what's happened with the SNC-Lavalin controversy, do you have any second thoughts about that proclamation?
I don't, and I'll tell you why. I judge people based on personal interactions. I had the ability, Vicki and I together had the ability to get to know Justin Trudeau, the leader of the third party.
Before he was Prime Minister.
Before he was Prime Minister. Justin Trudeau as a family man. Justin Trudeau as Prime Minister. Justin Trudeau and our working together on climate issues, on social justice, on working together for the state dinner, on bringing President Obama in. I will tell you, from my personal experience, and that's all I can relate to, from my personal experience, this is a man of high integrity, high values, really his clear vision as to what he'd like to see the world like and the role Canada plays in that. And so I can, again, only talk about my experiences. And I value my friendship and relationship, but more importantly, you know, when President Obama stood up before Parliament and said the world needs more Canada, he was also talking about these set of values that are now under attack around the world. And this is a tough moment for Canada to make these decisions as to what role you want to play as a country on the world stage. Now that the U.S. is backing away from being a collaborator, a multilateralist, and being isolated, what role is Canada going to play? And I think the voice that I experienced with the Prime Minister is a voice that's needed around the world.
Well, you mentioned climate change before, and it seems to be, the carbon taxes seems to be a really big problem for the federal Liberals right now. Are you surprised at the pushback on this issue from Ontario's progressive Conservatives?
Oh, I'm not surprised at pushback from any Conservatives relative to Liberals or Liberals relative to Conservatives. I mean, it's just the way these things play.
But does climate change have to be a partisan issue?
It does. It shouldn't be. I mean, it shouldn't be any more than we all should agree that this water should be clean, that I expect to drink it, and it isn't polluted. That being said, you know, politics gets in the way of so many different things. Economists have said this for a long time, and I've come from an economics background. Everybody will want an unlimited amount of a free good. Pollution is a free good in a sense, carbon pollution. Corporations and individuals can use carbon in an unlimited amount without any cost. Now we've put a price on it. Is it the right price? I have no idea whether it's the right price, but somebody has made the decision, which I think is the right one, to put a price on polluting our planet. And in your particular case, you're just taking that price and giving it back to the people. So while I think it's very false to have somebody run around and taking pictures of gasoline pumps and saying, oh, look, your gasoline prices are going up. That's just such a false narrative, and I hope nobody's falling suckered into that. That's just ridiculous.
We only have a few minutes left, and I really want you to be here for another 30 minutes. But alas, a big component of this book is art, and your love for art, your appreciation for art. And Vicki, you actually write, art ignites conversation, it inspires change. What role does art play in diplomatic relations?
Art plays an essential role. Artists and artists' voices bring us together. They can translate in a very beautiful and sometimes arresting way the dialogues that we should have. An example of that is the program that we brought to Canada called Contemporary Conversations, where we brought up extraordinary social impact visual artists to talk about the work we do in the States and partner with amazing artists in Canada like Ed Vertinsky, who's become a dear friend, using
and we have one of his pieces up there.
Oh, great. So, yes, Colorado River Delta. That piece, actually, Ed lent that piece to us to have in Lornado, our residence. We had it to evoke conversations in our home. But the idea that, you know, this beautiful piece is something you can walk up to and into and wonder what it is, and then you realize that it's degraded water, that man does have an impact on nature, and if we destroy nature, we will destroy ourselves. So it's that reflection of beauty, possibly, or storytelling that brings you into the dialogue in a less confronted way. And I think that, you know, we're very lucky to have artists as truth tellers. And we're very lucky to have artists help us to ignite those conversations. And it was, in my opinion, a very effective way of engaging in cultural diplomacy.
Like soft power, right?
Soft power.
And Ambassador, why do you feel that art has an especially useful ambassadorial tool for you?
So we had this experience. We had Eric Fischel, and he brought in his mock-up of this piece called Tumbling Woman.
We're seeing it on the screen right now.
This is a large one, actually. This was a life-size Tumbling Woman.
Tumbling Woman was displayed on Rockefeller Center at 9/11, just afterwards, a year later, in fact. And the people were so outraged over this and so impacted, they actually had to remove it from Rockefeller Center. The New Yorkers wanted this removed. Now, this came back on 9/11. Some years later, we had this in the National Gallery, and we had it also in the embassy. It evoked conversation. We then invited the entire diplomatic community in Ottawa to come. And I sat down and said, thank you for being there with us at 9/11. Thank you for being together as a community to deal with terrorism. But this art piece evoked conversation that could not happen. And we had a member of our embassy whose family member died as a result of 9/11, who was traumatized when she first saw this piece. But after conversation and dialogue and discussion, she became the largest advocate standing there in front of it, talking to everybody about 9/11 and her family. And I will tell you, I think art gave us the ability to have a conversation that was so rich.
Shortly thereafter is when we saw the first production of Come From Away. So it's like you look at whether it's visual art or it's song or it's literature, that opens doors for people.
It unites us. I have like 30 seconds, but I want to ask you one more question.
Sure.
How did your experiences in Canada change how you see yourselves as Americans?
Gosh,
Well, we don't see ourselves as Americans as an isolated island, for sure.
that's true.
And we're part of a world community. And we are stronger together with Canada than we are individually separate. And too many Americans, especially today, listening to the president talk about just one country making great at the expense of others. We were changed because we view Canada as our best friend, our best ally, and we're stronger together with Canada.
We feel like family.
No.
So.
Well, thank you so much for being here. This is such a fantastic book, and it's been really nice to meet you both.
You
Thank
too.
you.
And I
too.
suggested maybe a relationship book in the works,
Okay, we'll
maybe.
try.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
The Agenda in the Summer with Nam Kiwanuka is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.